Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Rosslyn Hill Chapel, a spiritual home for open minds. I'm James Chiriyankandath, an elder of the chapel and worship assistant for this Unitarian service. Whoever you are and however you are this morning, there is a space for you here. Whatever your race, gender, sexuality, class, age, and physical and mental capability, we welcome you in the spirit of love. We have small candles of joys and concerns which you're invited to light during the service. Also during the service, there is a children's chapel and creche for children aged 2 and above. Babies under 2 are welcome in the creche, but need to be accompanied by an adult. If you're watching at home, please join the virtual side aisle at midday. The Zoom link was in the weekly email, and you can find it via the link in the YouTube description. And those of you in the chapel, do join us for tea and coffee in the real side aisle after the service. You'll find a few notices in your order of service, and I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of things. First, next Sunday, the 23rd of April, there is an all-ages service with Adam Slate, our ministerial assistant, and Maya Rawlings. This service on the importance of expressing oneself and reasons we are sometimes reluctant to do so will have something for all ages: music, discussion, chances to create, and opportunities to move around. I would also like to mention something else that's happening next weekend, and that is the climate rally at Westminster, which is going on all weekend from the 21st to the 24th of April. And we will be there as Unitarians among 70 organizations, including the Quakers, Greenpeace, CND, Global Justice, and various others, coming together under the slogan, Unite to Survive. There will be a Zoom meeting today to discuss this, which is open to all. And you can check with Adam, if you want to show yourself, for more information after the service. At 6 p.m. this evening, we will have mindfulness meditation, and that will be followed by a labyrinth walking meditation. You can find information about these and all our activities on our website. If you prefer a paper copy, pick up the latest edition of our Open Mind newsletter at the steward's table at the back. The collection will be taken during the offertory, and you can donate by cash or card. And there'll be one of our stewards passing along the rolls to take the card collection. And if you want to donate by card, please raise your hand during the offertory. And the collection is divided this month between the chapel and Grief Encounter, who offer free professional and specialist bereavement services. Its mission is to provide every child and young person access to the best possible support following the death of someone close. I shall now light the chalice with these words. We light the flame as a symbol of our liberal religious faith. May this flame be as the light of knowledge in our minds and the warmth of love in our hearts.
Thank you, James.
Today's service, as you can see, will be taken by Feargus from the Golders Green Chapel, who many of us here know from many services that he has taken in the past and through his friendship with this chapel. Feargus.
Thank you very much, James. I always refer to Rosslyn Hill as Golders Green's mother chapel, and I recall that in 2003, when we celebrated our centenary, Margaret Perry, then secretary, and Tanya Morrison actually presented me with flowers and said, because of course it was founded by members of Rosslyn Hill, and that tie I think is very, very important. I'm no longer minister, but there are friendly and really faces that I've known for many, many years. And one of my fondest memories was two Dylan Thomas events with Shirley. One, the life and poetry of Dylan Thomas, and another, we did an animated reading of Under Milk Wood, and you very kindly asked me to do the Reverend Eli Jenkins, a great honor. So it's lovely being with you. Come into this place of peace, and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory, and let its history warm your heart. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart. Shall we join together in singing our first hymn, number 202, in Hymns for Living, Now We Gather Here to Worship, number 202. As you know, each Unitarian congregation is unique. I can say this truthfully, that I think that Rosslyn Hill has got the best music of any congregation I know. What a magnificent organ and what beautiful music you have. And also, each congregation has a different order of service, and one particular element I really admire is the greeting. And so now we shall do that. We shall greet each other, say our names, and
I think John can play and then you can.
Thank you, friends. That was a lovely element of the service, greeting each other. And now we have another characteristic Rosslyn Hill element, the story of all ages. So if any of the children would like to come forward, please do. And I'm going to have a technical operator who's going to put a lapel badge on me. So I always like to make sure that we can be properly heard. So I hope I don't need to do anything, do I? Lapel, yes, good. This is a story about the Earth and our future and the globe, because we're always conscious of the fact we're on a planet, and we've got to look after it for your sake, because you're the future, you're the children. And it's called The Perfect Globe. It's a retelling of a traditional story. I'm not aware who actually wrote it originally. It's anonymous, and if there are any interruptions, I understand. In a museum, many years ago, there was an amazing exhibit. It was a tiny globe, just a few feet in character, yet it held so much mystery and so much beauty within it that people came for miles and miles just to see it. there were always crowds around it and queues lined up, patiently waiting to see this globe, the Earth. And there it was, a delicate sphere floating in its case. It looked different from every angle. Sometimes you could see big pools of water in it and smaller flows of water flying into big pools. Sometimes these pools were smooth and blue, and at other times they were white with froth and full of movement. There were bumps on the globe, some big bumps with white tops, and some smaller gentle bumps. You could have run your fingers into the bumps, feeling the sharp spikes of some of them and the velvety textures of the others. And it danced in space at facing the light and resting in the darkness. People marveled at the thin layer of gas that surrounded this little globe and noticed that there were holes in it and that these holes seemed to be getting bigger. They were concerned in case something was going wrong with it, and sometimes parts of it would go dark for no apparent reason. And there might be smoke and a strange smell from those parts. And the people didn't know why, and they were concerned because these dark bits never quite seemed to get better again afterwards. Perhaps most of all, though, people gasped in wonder at the tiny creatures that lived on the globe. Some lived in the pools, and some lived just under the gas wrapping, and others lived on the bumps of land. The globe was declared a national treasure, and people paid large sums of money to make sure that it was protected. It had become so precious to them that they would have defended it with their own lives. They would never let anyone hurt it. It came to be known as the greatest wonder of all time, and people flocked to see it, to touch it, and to love it. They felt that just to be in touch with it would bring them healing, and just to gaze at it deeply would bring them wisdom. They even felt that without it, their own lives would be meaningless. That was a long time ago. The treasure has fallen into disrepair. Some say that the rot set in when people who used to treasure the globe started to shrivel and shrink because they were so wrapped up in less important matters. The people eventually got so small that they disappeared right inside the globe. And after that, they never noticed it again. And they completely forgot how they had once treasured and loved it. With no one to cherish it, the globe slowly stopped breathing, and eventually it slipped away into space, unregarded. We hope that that unhappy ending will not happen, and that you'll care about the future of this planet, because it's your home, isn't it? The earth, the air, the seas. So I hope you like that story. Yes?
The ending was very sad.
Yes, it was sad. I was conscious of the fact it was sad, and so that's why we don't want it to end that way, and people like you can stop it from that happening.
Tell my baby when she's older about that.
We shall rely on you. but it's lovely seeing you all, and I think in a short while we'll be singing out. We're singing "Go Now in Peace," but of course, any children who want to remain are very welcome to remain. But we still sing it, don't we? So we'll sing the words. Thank you. Thank you very much. Everywhere Thank you, friends. And another element which I think is beautiful in Rosslyn Church services is the prayer of names. And so I invite you into a time of prayer and meditation. We come together in fellowship each Sunday with hearts full of joy and full of concern. If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to say their name aloud in the coming moments of stillness, so that we may hold them in our prayers and thoughts. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for those who bring us joy and pray for the safekeeping of those whom we hold in concern. For all those names, spoken and unspoken, may they be surrounded by the loving kindness we offer them today. Blessed be. Amen. I think James will now come forward to introduce the offertory.
We shall now take the offertory, and as I said earlier, if there's anyone who is paying by card, please just indicate with your hand, and Roger will come round with the card reader.
John, for that beautiful musical meditation. I believe it's Johann Sebastian Bach. It's oh, right. No, that was a beautiful musical piece. Thank you, John. In your order of service and on the front, it says, the best of all possible worlds. In fact, although in part of the order of service, there should be a question mark. Because I would defer to Professor David Williams of all the possible galaxies and worlds that there are, but I think it's unlikely that this is the best of all possible worlds. So on the front page of the order of service, best of all possible worlds, question mark. Both our readings come from the 18th century satirical masterpiece Candide by Voltaire. He wrote it after a terrible earthquake in Lisbon in 1755. He was one of the pillars of the European Enlightenment. I don't know if anyone has had the chance to see the musical Candide by Leonard Bernstein. It was on at the National Theatre in 1999, I recall. It's certainly a masterpiece, as is Voltaire's novel. In fact, he wrote such a lot of novels, plays, poetry, but among the few of his works that's really survived is Candide. And so our first reading introduces Professor Pangloss, who is a representative of optimism, inane optimism. He sees a silver lining in every dark cloud. And the opposite is James, an Anabaptist, who sees the dark side, and perhaps James is nearer the truth of what life is actually like. But this, my first reading describes Professor Pangloss. Professor Pangloss was professor of metaphysico-theological cosmonicology, obviously a word made up by Voltaire. He proved admirably that there is no effect without a cause, and that in the best of all possible worlds, the baron's castle was the most magnificent of castles, and his lady the best of all possible baronesses. It is demonstrable, said he, that things cannot be otherwise than they are. For all being created for an end, and all is necessarily for the best end. Observe that the nose has been formed to bear spectacles, and so we have spectacles. Legs are visibly designed for stockings, and so we have stockings. Stones are made to be hewn and to construct castles. Therefore, my lord has a magnificent castle, for the greatest baron in the province ought to be the best lodged. Pigs are made to be eaten, therefore we eat pork all the year round. Consequently, those who assert that all is well have said a foolish thing. They should have said that all is for the best. Candide, his pupil, listened attentively and believed innocently, for he thought Miss Cunegonde extremely beautiful. Though he never had the courage to tell her so, he concluded that after the happiness of being born Baron of Tendard-den-Trunk, the second degree of happiness was to be Miss Cunegonde, the third, that of seeing her every day, and the fourth, of hearing Professor Pangloss, the greatest philosopher of the whole province, and consequently of the world. As we reflect on those inane sentiments, we shall sing our next hymn, written by the son of a German rabbi and a humanist. Sing we of the Golden City. It envisages the world as it might be. Sing we of the Golden City, 212. inspirational words of the German Jewish American humanist Felix Adler, the son of a German rabbi. Perhaps he was inspired to that by the figure of Zoroastro in the Magic Flute, that ideal hall where true brotherhood and sisterhood exist. And so for our second reading, there are so many brilliant passages in Candide, and it's not a very, very long novel. It's about, in the Penguin version, about 180 pages, but this is Voltaire's satirical view of Orthodox religion. This refers to the earthquake of in Lisbon in 1755, which made many thinking people realize, could a good God exist with all the suffering and deaths of innocents? After the earthquake had destroyed 3/4 of Lisbon, the sages of that country could think of no means more effectual to prevent utter ruin than to give the people a beautiful auto da fe, organized by the Inquisition, for it had been decided by the University of Coimbra that the burning of a few people alive by a slow fire and with a great ceremony is an infallible secret to hinder the earth from quaking. In consequence hereof, they'd seize a man from Biscay, convicted of having married his godmother, and on 2 Portuguese for rejecting the bacon which larded with chicken they were eating. After dinner, they came and secured Professor Pangloss and his disciple Candide, the one for speaking his mind, the other for having listened with an air of approbation. They were conducted to separate apartments, extremely cold, as they were never incommoded by the sun. 8 days after they were dressed in San Benitos, and their heads ornamented with paper mitres. The mitre and San Benito belonging to Candide were painted with reverse flames and with devils that had neither tails nor claws. But Pangloss's devils had claws and tails, and the flames were upright. They marched in procession, thus habited, and heard a very pathetic sermon, followed by fine church music. Candide was whipped in cadence while they were singing. The man from Biscay and the 2 men who had refused to eat bacon were burnt, and Pangloss was hanged, though that was not the custom. The same day, the earth sustained a more violent concussion. Candide, terrified, amazed, desperate, all bloody, palpitating, said to himself, "If this is the best of all possible worlds, then what are the others like? Well, if I'd only been whipped, I could put up with it, for I experienced that among the Bulgarians. But oh, my dear Professor Pangloss, thou greatest of philosophers, that I should have seen you hanged without knowing for what." In fact, miraculously, Pangloss comes back to life. He's actually hanged. They're like comic characters from Tom and Jerry. Masterpiece of satire from Voltaire. Like Mark Twain and Bernard Shaw, he used satire and humor to excoriate abuses, superstition, and obscurantism. Let us enter into the fellowship of prayer and reflection. The wonders of the cosmos are awesome to behold. Its constituent parts work with precision according to the ordered laws of nature. We see the cause and effect operate throughout the physical universe. So, in our living world of sentient beings, our human and animal frames show every sign of intelligent causation. Every organ of the body seems to have its function, each serving the purpose of the whole. We live in this material world, yet our minds are not confined to it. Those minds transcend the physical. We feel, we love, we look for meaning and purpose. We seek to probe all mysteries. We try to trace the workings and evidences of a mind, possibly a great mind, behind the visible and tangible world in which we find ourselves. Out of the stars in their courses, out of the dust of eternity, we have come, stardust and sunlight, mingling through time and space, earth warmed by sun, lit by sunlight. This is our home in the immensity of space. Mystery hidden in mystery, back through eons of time, rising from rocks and the sea, kindled by sunlight on earth, arose life. Out of the sea to the land, up from darkness to light, rising to walk and to fly, life grew here on earth. This is a wonder of time. This is a marvel of space. Out of the stars came our planet Earth, our island home among the stars. This is a marvel of the life force. Out of inanimate matter came living beings who saw, heard, and touched. This is a marvel of humanity, living beings who think, who wonder, who feel, who love. Eternal Spirit of the universe, we stand in awe of the presence of this vast cosmos. In its proper time, may the mystery unfurl before us. Though we're fettered by our earthly lives, may the depths of the Spirit be ever present to us. May the universe forgive us our faults and follies, and may we in equal measure be forgiving. May we ever turn our eyes towards the light to dispel the darkness which might otherwise engulf us. The strength of the universe is all about us. It abounds with power and glory beyond our greatest imaginings. May we be nurtured and refreshed by the communion of silent meditation as we think of life's purpose and our own part in it. Here we are reminded of mystery and holy things, of the finite nature of our common humanity, of the love of God made possible only in the love of one another and of all living creatures. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. For our human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, for high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, for all who have labored for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, for human liberty and opportunities to change, to grow, to affirm and choose. We give thanks for all these, and we pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Amen. We shall now enjoy music for reflection, and you light your candles. Thank you, John, for that beautiful wonderful grand piano, got a magnificent organ and grand piano, a feast of music. And so for our address, which I may slightly shorten, as I said, in the title, The Best of All Possible Worlds should definitely have a question mark, because I think any sane philosopher would not consider this the best of all possible worlds. The subject of Voltaire's satirical masterpiece is one which surely every thinking person must think about every day: the state of the world, its inequalities and injustices. It's one philosophers have wrestled for centuries, and the great religions claim to address in their scriptures. But which one of us is totally convinced in our heart of hearts that we really know the answer? Even if we can provide an intellectual rationalization for the existence of seemingly random suffering and the origin of what we perceive to be evil, can we accept such cold and dispassionate explanations in our hearts? Let us for the time being ignore the academic philosophers and earnest theologians, and instead consider the moral of Voltaire's witty satire Candide. That moral is the foolishness of ungrounded religious optimism, and Voltaire teaches the lesson of life's sometimes unbearable blows of misfortune with irony and humane laughter. The hero, or rather anti-hero, is Candide, whose misfortunes, paraphrasing the words of Dr. Johnson, point the moral and adorn the tale. Candide is the illegitimate nephew of a snobbish and self-important German baron, who's grown up as a pupil of the absurd, optimistic philosopher, Professor Pangloss. Candide has fallen in love with the baron's daughter, Cunegonde. But on the discovery of the affair, Candide is banished from the baronial castle. He then has a series of improbable adventures which put to the test the naively optimistic philosophy which Candide has acquired from his tutor Pangloss. On being cast out of the castle, Candide is conscripted into the army, where he's severely flogged and abused. In this episode, Voltaire satirizes the wickedness and folly of war. Escaping to Holland, he's insulted by narrow-minded Calvinist enemies of Roman Catholicism, is reunited with Pangloss, and is befriended by a kindly Anabaptist called Jacques. They travel together to Lisbon, but just before they arrive, their ship is hit by a storm, and Jacques is drowned. Soon after, Candide and Professor Pangloss arrive in Lisbon. They're arrested by the Inquisition. Pangloss is condemned to death for heresy, for mild, inoffensive remarks, and Candide is sentenced to a public flogging for listening to the professor. Candide is treated for his wounds by an old lady who brings him to his former lover, Cunegonde, who turns out not to be dead, as Candide supposed. In one little satirical touch, this woman is the illegitimate daughter of a pope. Here, Voltaire, born a Roman Catholic, makes fun of religious obscurantism. She tells him she's the mistress of a rich merchant and an arrogant Portuguese inquisitor. Candide is discovered by each of these in turn in her company, and he kills them in self-defense. So in fear of his life, he has to escape again. He boards a ship bound for South America. On the voyage, he has conversations with the old woman, who announces proudly she's a pope's daughter and describes the various mishaps that she's undergone. She claims that no one is truly happy, for we all suffer misfortunes of various degrees of gravity. Landing in Latin America, he learns that the Inquisition is on his tracks, and so he escapes and takes refuge with the Jesuits. Another improbable comic encounter occurs. He meets Cunegonde's brother, who's now joined the Jesuit order. Learning of Candide's intention to marry his sister, the baron's son is outraged. They argue and Candide runs him through with his sword. Forced to flee again, Candide with his faithful servant Cacambo next goes to the utopian land of El Dorado, the only place on earth where people seem truly happy and content with their lot. Human nature being what it is, Candide eventually tires of this ideal land and leaves with many precious treasures in search of Cunégonde. After various misadventures, having lost almost his entire fortune, he reaches Paris and Venice. He's meanwhile met Martin, a confirmed pessimist who tries to persuade Candide of the folly of blind optimism, for he still tries to see the silver lining in every dark cloud. They encounter Paquette, the chambermaid, who gave Pangloss syphilis, and she's now the mistress of a monk. Another remarkable and unexpected surprise for Candide follows. Pangloss himself is discovered alive along with Cunégonde's brother in a Turkish galley. Candide pays for their release. After various other alarms and excursions, all the main characters except the insufferably snobbish Baron, who even now refuses to accept Candide as a social equal, are reunited. In another passage, Voltaire uses brilliant comic exaggeration when he makes one of the characters, the old woman, speak of some of the misfortunes suffered by Candide. Alas, they do not all live happily ever after, but make the best of their lot by working hard, being realistic about what can actually be achieved, valuing human companionship, and taking life as it comes. Voltaire uses this witty moral tale to satirize the evils of his time, and we would say of our time. He attacks religious fanaticism, the inhumanity of war, and many other wrongs and injustices. It's a timeless satire which has lost none of its power in the over 2.5 centuries since it was written. Voltaire confronts us with profound questions about the meaning of evil and suffering and the inadequacy of orthodox Christian theology in explaining the world as it actually is, with all its heart-rending and seemingly pointless sufferings of the good and innocent, while the guilty appear to flourish like the bay tree. Of course, that harks back to the book of Job, and indeed the cynical author of the book of Ecclesiastes. Voltaire's moral is one of dignified and stoic acceptance of life as it is, without illusions. He makes it clear we cannot know all the answers why evil and suffering exist, but we can, each in our own way, try to make the world a better and a kinder place. Let each of us in the small tasks of daily life find a measure of true contentment and cooperate with others to encourage and help them to do the same. The last scene of the book is one of quiet contentment after all the mishaps, sorrows, and upsets that have gone before. The monk becomes a carpenter and an honest man. Cunégonde, a good pastry cook. Paquette, a skilled embroiderer, and everyone else finds useful work to do for the common good. Only one character seems incapable of learning the true lessons of all these eventful happenings, and that is the irrepressible comic optimist, Professor Pangloss. He can never see the world as it actually is, but has to look at it through rose-colored spectacles and see an ideal world of his philosophic imagination. So does Voltaire, in this moral fable, answer the fundamental question of the book of Job? Why do the innocent suffer? And what is the source of evil? Unlike the author of Job, the witty Frenchman uses humor to answer the question. But in the end, remarkably, they come to the same conclusion. We have to make the best of our circumstances and find happiness and companionship wherever we can. This is neither excessively pessimistic nor unduly optimistic. We leave the last words to Professor Pangloss and hear Candide's sage reply. Professor Pangloss is holding forth in the usual pompous manner. There is a chain of events in this best of all possible worlds, for if you had not been turned out of a beautiful mansion at the point of a jackboot for the love of Lady Cunegonde, and if you had not been involved in the Inquisition and had not wandered over America on foot, and had not struck the Baron with your sword, you would not be here eating candied fruit and pistachio nuts. A sadder and a wiser man, Candide replies, and we see the wisdom of his words about making the best of the world we have and doing steady and small good deeds to make this imperfect world of ours a gentler, kinder, and more bearable place. Those last words of Candide's. That's true enough, but we must go and work in the garden. In the original, il faut cultiver son jardin. Let's do practical deeds for humanity. The moral of Voltaire's Candide. And so for our closing hymn, number 132, and I believe you've chosen another tune for this, John. So we'll hear the tune. Please kindly be seated. Our closing words of benediction. We affirm the unfailing renewal of life, rising from the earth and reaching for the sun, all living creatures shall fulfill themselves. We affirm the steady growth of human companionship, rising from ancient cradles and reaching for the stars. People the world over shall seek new ways of understanding. We affirm a continuing hope that out of every tragedy, the spirits of individuals shall rise to build a better world. We rejoice this day in the unquenchable and eternal light that welcomes each one who comes into the world. In that light, we overcome those failings and imperfections that touch the lives and spirits of others and of ourselves. Illumine all our ways, until each one of us shall be brought into that marvelous light of openness, hope, and joy. Amen.
Warm thanks for that beautiful music, John. Was it Maurice Ravel? Strauss. That's right, yeah. This is a musical education in itself, beautiful music. Thank you also, James.
Thank you. And our technical operator. And when I was telling the story, I was reprimanded it was a sad ending. Perhaps we should have a special sensitivity reader. I would hope that we have happy endings, and so we should be more conscious of this. Of course, compared to the books of Roald Dahl, it was very mild, wasn't it? To what children are used to. Even Enid Blyton is subject to sensitivity readers these days. But thank you very much for your kind reception. It's lovely to be here. And I look forward to seeing more of you. And thank you, James.
And thank you, Feargus, for so deftly and eloquently bringing out the moral of Voltaire's tale. And please do join us for tea and coffee in the side aisle.